experts on Zoom by now, but just a reminder that if you're not talking, if you would mute yourself, send any questions that come up for you during the time to the chat. We'll have people monitoring the chat. We are recording this session, so just make note if you need to take off your video for any reason, you could be recorded. And we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but we've got a panel of amazing experts and practitioners in events, both in person and virtual, who are here to give us their wisdom today. Before we get started, I wanted to lift up a couple of things that are coming up at CNM that you may want to take part in. We've got a Crucial Conversations in the Workplace workshop next week with Dawn Stone, the conflict chick, so she knows how to have crucial conversations. We have our final event for the Innovation Catalyst with a keynote by Marcus Whitney and the presentations from all the groups that have been going through that. It's going to be a fun and inspiring event with a People's Choice Award as a featured segment. And we've got I think a lot of you on the call today are fundraisers or CEOs, and we have a really cool new member benefit at CNM for members called Grant Station. It is taking the place of the fundraising grant software that we had, where you had to come to our office to look up your grants. This will give you an opportunity to look for grants from the comfort of your own offices. We've got a webinar and a training session on that next week. All these will be in the chat. And also want to remind you that Crossroads is doing their anti-racism training with us on April 22nd and 23rd. So you might want to check in on that. So we want to know who's here today and what your interest in online events is. So we've got two quick poll questions that Catherine is going to put up as we get started, and that will let our panelists know who's here. So are you planning an in-person fundraising event in 2021? Or are you planning a virtual fundraising event in 2021? And we'll let you do that. I'm going to, as you're doing that, get started with introductions. So why are we doing a town hall on events? I know that's a silly question because it's on almost all of our minds. How do we do events, whether they're fundraising events, whether they're programmatic events? It's really different in the virtual world. And as we look ahead to when we might be back together in person, what does that look like? And what does the hybrid look like? So at CNM, without question, the most visible event that we do is our Salute to Excellence Award ceremony, which for 26 years attracted nearly 1,200 people to a ballroom at tables of 10. Well, to celebrate nonprofits in the community. So that all came to a screeching halt in 2020 when we canceled the awards and the event, and we chose instead to support our members with crisis support programming. We'll be back to normal by 2021, we thought, right? Wrong. We've spent the last few months evaluating the way forward for our event: in person, virtual, some sort of hybrid. And I think every one of our nonprofit agencies are engaging in this same set of this decision matrix. So we thought it would be fun today to talk with a few veterans in the event industry about what has changed, lessons learned, how you can make money with virtual events, and how they're thinking about moving forward as things change and maybe don't change as much or as quickly as we want them to. So unfortunately, we're probably not going to have all the answers today, but I bet we're all going to come away with new ideas, angles, and thoughtful ways to approach events in this new landscape. And I don't know about you, but just knowing that there are others that are reinventing the way they do things makes me feel a little bit less alone. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then they'll each give us some wisdom. KB Holzer is with us. She's the marketing director at Conexion Americas. Sarah Kelly Freeman is the director of sales at Evolution Event Solutions. Lindsay Lanahan is the development manager at Oz Arts here in Nashville. And Dana Patel is the events manager in the creative services department at HCA Healthcare. So we're going to start. Thanks so much, you guys, all for being here. We're going to start with KB, marketing director at Conexion Americas. KB, you've got a big event coming up on April 23rd, Cafecito. I've been in a big ballroom at tables of 10 for breakfast many times. I don't think that's what you did last year, and I'm guessing that's not what you're doing this year. Tell us what's going on and how you're going to make it work.
Thanks for having me here today. It's so funny because a year ago, it was about the middle of March, of course, when we all realized that our in-person events were probably not going to happen like we thought. And so, we had about 6 weeks to figure out what in the world we were doing. Of course, you all know when you plan a large event like that, we typically have 600 to 700 people at Music City Center, but that planning starts months and months before. And so we had already been deep into planning for an in-person event when we had to kind of shift all of a sudden and figure out how we would do this event online. So kind of the first thing that I did was talk to some of our board members, talk to other supporters, some of our sponsors, and talk to them about what really made Cafecito special for them. What was great about coming to Music City Center? Why did they want to come every year? And talk about what was really impactful for them and try to figure out ways that we could bring that to light in a virtual platform. So we heard a lot of things about music, and the fun, and also just hearing directly from program participants that have benefited from our programs over the year. Of course, we had a lot to talk about last year. There was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know where we'd be going, but we knew that we'd be facing a lot of challenges in the community that we would need to respond to. And so, we did our best to keep that fun feeling, the celebratory feeling, and also share the stories of our program participants. I know that one thing people wanted to know about was kind of the bilingual aspect. Of course, we're working with the Latino community in Nashville and across Tennessee. The first thing that we think about anytime we're moving to another platform or another way of reaching people is to really think about where people get their information, where they look for events like this, and make it as accessible as possible. So with Cafecito, we actually streamed on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously at 9 a.m. Last year, and we will do the same this year to make it easily accessible at places where people get their information. They don't have to download Zoom. They don't have to learn how to use a new platform. It's in a place where they're getting information already. It's of course more work on our part to make sure that we're getting it streaming in multiple places, but it does make it really easy for people to participate and also share it with their friends and other supporters. We do, as we talk in the event, as we produce the videos that we do share during the event, we'll invite people to participate in whatever language they are most comfortable in. Which turns out to be great, because then we have it about half in Spanish and we have it half in English, and then we'll do subtitles for each other language to make sure that everyone can participate in it. Probably our biggest challenge there is finding a bilingual fundraising platform, which has been a lot of trial and error for us. A little lesson learned last year, we created a whole English pathway and a Spanish pathway in our fundraising platform. So you kind of had two different landing pages. I didn't think that worked as well. So this year we're really integrating them into one thing. One thing we know in our community is a lot of families may have some members who are English dominant, some members who are Spanish dominant. And so having both the Spanish and the English on the same pages makes it a little easier for people to navigate and share with their friends and family who they might be wanting to share in Spanish or in English. So that's kind of the fun stuff we do to keep it bilingual and accessible to everyone. I know we also wanted to talk a little bit about what some of the opportunities were and some of the limitations that we found in moving to an online world. And we've definitely learned a lot and excited to apply those this year as we do our second virtual Cafecito on April 23rd. And hope to be able to figure out some way of seeing people in person again. I would say that was one of our biggest challenges and limitations of a virtual event, is really that feeling of community and coming together. Everybody loves, our team, not just the people who come to the event and want to hear about what we do, which is great, but Cafecito is such a great event for our team to come. So we have team all across the state. We have about 50 employees working in the community, and it's wonderful for them to walk into a ballroom full of 600 or 700 people that are there to support the work that they're doing, and to have the music and to see people that took time out of their day to come downtown and participate in this breakfast is such a great um, feeling for people. And I think that's one of the things that we've had the hardest time figuring out how to bring, to our team, to our board members who love having that experience. One thing we did there is that we've continued to do, we've done a couple of virtual events since that first one last April, is to have a Zoom watch party for our team and our board members to get together. So we are live on a Zoom call, watching the event streaming all together. And it's just really fun to have people chatting and supporting each other and being like, oh my gosh, you did such a great job in that little video clip of you talking about your program. Um, so that's been kind of one way to bring that together, and make sure that the team really feels supported and engaged in the process.
That's
Um,
that's very cool. I have a
yeah,
quick question
sure.
about that, because I know that the model has been board members and donors putting together, bringing their friends, and coming together to hear the great stories, and then hopefully not leaving before they've made a generous gift.
Yes.
Are you still working on that model, and are you doing little mini watch parties with, or how are you making sure the money rolls in?
Yes.
I
That's
mean, not
that's
to
a
be
very
too
important
crass,
part of
but
it, right? So what we did is we transitioned that idea of a table hosted where people bring their friends to donate using a peer-to-peer platform. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to share a link. We use a platform called Mobile Cause that has a great peer-to-peer fundraising platform where we can have people create their tables as a virtual table, invite their friends can RSVP to their table. They can also everyone can set their own fundraising goal. I think that's been one of the great opportunities of a virtual platform, is that we're able to include people, events that our tables at Music City Center are very expensive to put on. And moving to a virtual platform, it's allowed us to be so much more inclusive. If you want to come and just experience it and that inspires you to volunteer, that's great. If you can come and fundraise $1,000 at your table, that's great too. But it did allow us to expand the reach of the event itself, as well as our donor base. So we increased our number of individual donors by about 60% last year having the virtual event. So it
wow.
really was a great opportunity. We had lots of volunteers, we had staff members create tables, virtual tables, and invite their friends. And instead of only having 10, you could invite 20 or 30 or 40. It didn't really matter. Um, and so it was really successful as a fundraising event as well.
That's
And
awesome. You mentioned that you have people all over the state, so I would think you would have been able to have participants from East Tennessee and West Tennessee that would have probably not made it for a in-person breakfast as well.
yeah, it really allowed us to open it up to a wider variety in our audience, in our donors, even people who are here locally sometimes can't make it downtown at 9 a.m. on a certain day. So it's really allowed us to open it up, and have a lot more people. Okay, Catherine's telling me I have 1 minute. So Terry, what do I need to mention here?
Well, so one of the you serve a population, the Latinx population in Tennessee, and we hear a lot about the digital divide, and I wonder if that has, and not necessarily for Cafecito, just all the things that you do. How have you conquered, or how are you working with the digital divide to make sure that you're able to serve your full constituency?
Yeah, I have been so impressed with our team, serving the community virtually and also through a lot of drive-through events and delivery to people's houses. We've been working really hard to make sure that we're bringing all of our programming still in this time. Um, it has been interesting to see, you know, we've been able to figure out ways to transition meeting people where they are. So if your way of accessing a program is on your phone, or we need to text you a link to something instead of emailing it, our team has been really great about working with the community to find those ways that people can participate, and then spending a lot of time walking people through the process of how to use different platforms, which is
Mhm.
great because everyone's having to learn how to use those for
That's
work,
right.
for their kids' school. So our team has been amazing, amazing at walking people through different processes and really meeting them where they are and making sure that we can offer that programming in the way that best meets their needs.
Terrific. Well, KB, we're so excited for Cafecito on the 23rd. Good luck with that. It sounds like you're all ready to just nail it. So we'll be back with
Thank
you in the
you.
Q&A section, but now we're turning to Lindsay Lanahan, and Lindsay is the development manager at Oz Arts Nashville. Lindsay, you organized conversations at Oz last month, I believe, in February, and it was a virtual fundraiser benefiting Oz. Tell us about it. How did it go? What did you do to make it successful? What would you do differently? All the things.
All the things. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone at CNM, for having me. I'm excited to be here. And for those who aren't familiar, Oz Arts is a renovated warehouse in West Nashville that now holds diverse performing arts and visual arts events throughout the year. And we also develop works by local and regional artists, and we bring national and international artists to Middle Tennessee. So Conversations at Oz is one of our 2 annual benefits that we have throughout the year. And we actually got really lucky in 2020. We had it in early February, right before everything happened. So we felt really grateful that we didn't have to worry about that. But then coming up on this past February, we really went back and forth for a long time about whether or not to have it at all, whether or not to just move it virtually or move it later in the year when we hopefully could have it in person. And similar to what KB said, we had a lot of conversations with our board and our sponsors, really just talking to people about what they were comfortable with. I know a lot of people are zoomed out at this point. So we didn't want to put them through not a miserable experience, but we didn't want them to just opt out because they didn't want to spend any more time online. So after all of those conversations, we ended up deciding that it was most important to keep the event in the same time frame and have it in February, as it always has been. It's still a pretty young event. It's only been around for 7 years, so we're still building the reputation, and we felt like it was important to just stay consistent. So next, we played around with a lot of different ideas for our format and what platform we would use. And we looked at a ton. We looked at Hopin and iBreakthrough, and they really make you feel like you're in a like kind of a conference room or a warehouse, and they have different tables that you can visualize, and it actually feels like you're in the room with people. But ultimately, we decided to stick with Zoom as our platform, just based on the format of the event. We felt like it would be easiest for people to use a platform that they're already familiar with. At this point, everyone has been on Zoom. We didn't want them to have to download anything new or learn a new software. We just thought if they can click something that they've already got downloaded on their computer or their iPad or their iPhone, wherever they are, they can access the event. We wanted it to be as accessible as possible and free. So I know I'm talking a little bit more about our fundraising strategy. And it wasn't too different actually from what we do with the in-person event. Conversations is pretty unique because we ask 35 to 40 diverse community leaders from the Nashville area to each lead an intimate conversation. So it's set up as a gala dinner, but a little more casual than a gala. So we're normally in our warehouse with 400 people, and each table is led by a different person, and each person works in a different industry, and they each pick a topic that they'd like to discuss with the people at their table. So anyone purchasing a ticket to the event can choose their table based on the conversation host or the topic. So we decided to keep that same format, and basically everyone would come into the Zoom room at the same time. And we played a few short videos in the beginning and just talked about our last year, had a fundraising moment where people could, had a chance to donate. And then we broke out into our 40 different breakout rooms.
Wow.
And that was definitely the biggest challenge that we had. Going into the event, we thought that everyone would be broken out automatically. But there was some fine print in Zoom, and only the first 200 people would be broken out automatically. So we were placing people in their rooms in real time while people were waiting and while the video was happening. So we found that out on the day of the event. But it actually turned out to be a cool moment because people could see who else was in the room. And it really felt like a who's who of Nashville, and people had a great sense of humor about it. They were like, let's have a drink, what's everyone watching on Netflix, and shouting out different people that they recognized in the crowd. And it just ended up being a lot of fun, even though it was extremely stressful on our end. So other than just general ticket sales and sponsorships, we used a platform called GiveSmart for text to give, and you can also use it for silent auctions and live auctions, but this event doesn't have anything like that. It's just a dinner. It's very, very casual. So we really rely heavily on sponsorship dollars, and we actually saw 110% increase in our sponsorships for the event this year. And,
wow,
and
congratulations. That's
thank
terrific.
you. Thank you.
Lindsay, we just have a couple minutes left in your segment,
okay.
and I was wondering if you could hit briefly how you've handled your performance events, because I know you've got at least one hybrid thing going on, but can you give us a quick snapshot of some of the performance events that you've done either virtually or in person?
Yeah, absolutely. That time went by so fast.
No.
So we actually just started having in-person events a couple of weekends ago, and we have our last weekend coming up tomorrow. And we are just bringing in small groups of 20 people at a time. And we have performances every hour on the hour for like a 4 or 5 hour period. And we sanitize in between. And our warehouse is very spread out, and we've got little squares to indicate where people can stand, and they're 8 feet.
And is this a dance program? Did I remember?
It is. It's dance and music, and there are some light and structures, some installations inside too. It's very cool.
So cool. Well, I shouldn't be surprised that you guys are getting creative at Oz, because that's what it's all about. But thank you for sharing with us. And we are going to move to Dana Patel, who is the event manager of creative services at HCA Healthcare. So Dana, you guys do Hack for the Community, and it's usually a 2-day or 24-hour or something crazy like that event where people work on apps, and the nonprofits come up with amazing ideas with the help of your tech folks at HCA. What has it been like with Hack for the Community in the virtual world?
Well, 2020 was definitely a year of change. So just a little bit of background for Hack for the Community so you can know what we were dealing with. It is a biannual 2-day event. We began it in 2014. And with it, HCA actually partners with the Nashville Tech Council. And what our goal is to bring the best IT professionals in Nashville together to create much needed technology solutions for the local nonprofits. In 2020, we worked with over 30 local business partners to register about 200 volunteers for the event. And now, at the best of times, it's always a beast to plan, but we love it because the results are just so rewarding. So 2020, we had the in-person event fully planned for April 2020. Obviously, we quickly realized that that just was not going to happen at all. So we pressed pause until about midsummer because we were just sure COVID was just a whim. It was going to be fine. but as you guys know, it was not. So once we realized that an in-person event just wasn't an option, we really jumped into fully planning a virtual event because we promised all of our nonprofits that we were going to give them these tech solutions and we didn't want to make them wait another year for them. So with that being said, this event is really unique. We needed a platform that had a main stage, breakout rooms, exhibit halls, chat, and video features. So we just knew that something like Zoom or WebEx wouldn't cut it. So what I decided to do was to reach out to one of my production partners to see what platform they recommended. And the good news is that pretty much all event production companies have pivoted from live events to virtual events. So if you have a trusted partner, reach out to them because they're going to know which platform is going to work best for you. So I personally work with Velocity Productions, and they recommended the Hopin platform. And this platform was literally everything we were looking for in one easy to use function. However, about 10 minutes into it, I realized there was no way that I was going to be able to manage the production on this brand new platform. So we actually hired Velocity to run the technology for us. And I will say a good rule of thumb is if you use a production company for your in-person events, you're going to need them for the virtual event just as much. So make sure to budget that when you're planning these events. But the good news is the event turned out incredible. So we had 2 days of keynote speakers. We had a mixology class, a yoga class. We even had baby kangaroos make an appearance for us. But beyond that, and the most important part is we had 200 volunteers create 14 usable tech products for our local nonprofits. It ended up saving our nonprofits about 1,200 hours of work annually and a combined $480,000.
Wow. Say that again. That is amazing. Those are great
Yes,
numbers.
great numbers. Yes, so the end result, 1,200 hours of work annually saved and a combined $480,000 for our nonprofits.
Wow. Well, on behalf of all of those, thank you. And we're all looking at the website for when you're doing it again, I think.
Yes,
So as you're looking forward, are you thinking you'll be in person next time, or you think did the hybrid event work even better in some ways? Or the virtual event?
yeah, that's actually a great question. So I think we are, for the foreseeable future, we are going to continue to do virtual and hybrid events because what we realize is that our reach is so much greater. And I'm sure you guys have seen that as well. So for an in-person event, you're limited to the people within driving distance who are available at the exact day and the exact time of your event. But if you offer a hybrid option, you still have that virtual connection, but you also can essentially open up to anybody across the globe. So your reach is just so much stronger there.
That's fascinating. And with HCA being I believe you're a global healthcare company.
We are.
Yeah, so that's really great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we will be back with you in the Q&A, I'm sure. Let's turn now to Sarah Kelly Freeman, who is an event planner, and she's grew up in the event world and everything was in person. And but she had some experience with virtual events even before all of this happened. And so Sarah is the director of sales at Evolution Event Solutions. And Sarah, you've heard from some practitioners. We are real interested with you as a professional and what some strategies are that nonprofits can utilize to deliver exceptional and memorable guest journey experiences. Because it's one thing, one of the most scary parts of these virtual events is getting the people to come, and then we have to be sure they have the good experience. But can you enlighten us, give us some tips?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that great intro and having me here today. So yeah, I mean, first and foremost, if you have it in your budget to work with a event agency or production company who can sit there and really like detail creative experiences that you can bring to your event, that of course is the ideal situation, right? If that is not the case and we're working on a tight budget, which we totally get rolling out of 2020, the best advice that I can give you is to really think about the guest experience. And just like you said, Terry, you need to think about it from the start to the finish. So where's the start? The start is your first piece of communication that you put out to the world. So that could be an Instagram post, that could be an email blast, that could be a physical invite. That is the start of your event. So you need to think about, where are my guests going to be receiving this message from? Also, the frequency in which you now have to share messages. We are all on the screen all day, every day, constantly getting, different notifications, just constantly stuff. It's just in our face, right? So right now they say that you need to expose somebody to a message 7 times before it resonates with them. 7. So you can't just send out a save the date for your upcoming fundraiser, 1 or 2 times and assume that it's hit your target audience. It probably hasn't. So that's a huge piece, is identifying where the start is, as well as the frequency. And then just having your communication being super clear and frequent. You also need to think about the communication that you're having with your guests after the event. So, if you came up with action items that you're going to accomplish after the meeting, send those out to people. And then along the way, send them updates and be like, hey guys, this is so exciting, but we've accomplished X, Y, and Z of our goal. If you have any sort of like deliverables that you could send to your guests afterwards, that's also like providing more value to them. And they think back to the event and they're like, okay, that was worth the hour that I sat there. So those are my big one is, I guess, communication and really putting yourself in the guest perspective.
So for in-person or hybrid events, what modifications should nonprofits consider to maintain safety for both their attendees and their staff? Like,
Yeah.
one of the things one of the most fun things that we always did at Salute to Excellence was a photo booth. Is that, where we had people show me their staff photos from Salute all the time. Is that, is that a no-no at this point or what?
To be completely honest with you, the rules around COVID and events are more about the amount of people that can be in certain square footage with each other. And then around like food and beverage, standing, not standing, that kind of thing. So Terry, I'm not going to tell you can't have a photo booth, but there is a ton that you have to think about to provide a safe event and to make your guests feel comfortable. So thinking about COVID and spacing and safety, that starts at your event design. And then it runs into your run a show. So when are you taking your bathroom breaks? You have to time those now for a big conference. You have to eliminate any self-service areas. So we used to always have, those like coffee carts and you could just go up and get your coffee whenever you want. Can't do that anymore. With, buffets, they have to be served by somebody. You can't serve yourself. Some other good tips are, use linenless tables. That way you can wipe down the tables, every hour or whatever you feel comfortable with. And then you also have to think about the flow of your event. So how are your guests moving? They need to be entering through the same door and exiting through the same door so that you don't have people passing by each other. If you have a trade show, it needs to be a one-way trade show booth so that everybody's flowing the same way. Adding signage to the floors. I know that we see that a lot in restaurants and grocery stores and stuff like that, but bringing that into your event and even starting it on the outside of the building. And then again, back to my communication. Guys, I love it. I love my communication, but you have to over communicate with people right now. And you need to tell them, you need to set the expectation up front of what this event is going to look like. Are you requiring masks the whole time? Are they allowed to take their masks off when they sit down? Or, tell them about these timed bathroom breaks. Tell them everything that you can so that there are no surprises and guests will feel more comfortable coming on site if they feel like they have a little bit of control over their experience. So there are a bunch of ways that like you can, go on the easy end of it. And then there are ways that we can get real into it with you. But that is a service that we offer to our clients. I am certified in COVID tracing, COVID contact tracing, and I'm also a certified COVID officer as well. We've got multiple trainings and certifications on our team as well. It's not just me. So that's something that we're really finding meeting planners are like, oh, I need your help, because it's also different from every state. And in Tennessee right now, it's different in every county. And that is so much, and it's updating once a month. Like, that is so much information for planners to keep up with. And then on top of that, they're trying to think about like the dollars and the everything else. So that's something that we're trying to take off of planners' plates and keep everybody safe and bring live events back.
The things you never dreamed would be part of your job, right?
Right? Timing
Like
adult
COVID
bathroom breaks. Like, I
conduct, yeah.
cannot.
So one of the things that's been on my mind is fundraising events are the bread and butter of so many Nashville nonprofits, Middle Tennessee nonprofits. It's, I think more so, maybe it's a Southern thing. It's more so than some. We are a gala city in
Yep,
Nashville.
we love a gala.
We love a gala, and we just haven't been able to do that. So how do we design our event revenue models and can we charge the same amount? I mean, what I'm noticing as we've been figuring out what we're doing for Salute next year, that it's really not less expensive to produce a virtual event if you're going to make it as activate it the way you're suggesting. So how do we make it pay for itself? How do we make those galas pay for themselves? Or, and this may be for some of the other folks as well, has event fundraising run its model, and do we need to be thinking about a new model? So tell us about how you would approach.
I was going to say, Terry, that was so many questions. So a couple things that I want to touch on here. One, whenever we are working with a nonprofit, the first thing that I do is create a custom budget for them. So I want to look at what your income is. So do you have sponsors? What are your ticket prices? If you know that information, are we getting donations, et cetera? And then what are we spending on this event? What are you spending on your venue, or is it your platform, or what is it? So that we can find a happy medium and go on and predict what your fundraising amount is going to be, right? Outside of like a silent auction or anything like that. Doing those budgets also help with pricing out tickets as well. The other thing that I want to say about tickets is know your worth. When you are doing virtual or hybrid events, people are like, oh, I don't want to charge for it. No. If you're providing 3 hours of education to your members, we need to talk about what is that worth to your members, and not giving away material, deliverables, information, education hours, et cetera, for free. There is, of course, going to be a difference. Terry, I know we've talked about this. If you are selling, a table for $1,000, you're not going to charge somebody online $1,000 to watch a virtual event. That's not realistic. But still being willing to charge for something is good. The other thing about budget is it is funny, and I think that most people are educated on living in a virtual world for a year, but virtual events are not necessarily cheaper than an in-person event. You're just allocating your funds differently. So instead of paying for your venue and your food and beverage, you're pumping that money into a platform, which is everything for your guests, right? What was your last question?
Just all about that revenue model. Oh, well, the last question, and I'll open this up to the other panelists as well.
Yeah.
So KB and Lindsay and Dana, be thinking about this. Do we need to be thinking about a new way of raising funds in the community? Because so many of our nonprofit agencies depend a good bit for their general operating support from those fundraising events. And are we too dependent? I think
right. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that we need to get away from, the fundraising model, or that we're, too dependent on that in particular. What I am finding with a lot of nonprofits is that they put all their eggs in one basket, and their yearly or annual gala, that's where you raise all of your money. So in 2020, when that one couldn't happen, it was a mess, right? So I've been working with a number of nonprofits in Nashville, trying to set them up with a more realistic model moving forward. So let's have a couple medium-sized events throughout the year That way, if we get a second wave of COVID and it wipes out one of your events, you still have another 3 that are gonna, bring in money for you guys. So I think that it's just thinking about it differently, and how you're structuring it. But I would love to hear from the other panelists if y'all have other
I'd
ideas.
love to hear it. Lindsay, have you got a thought on that?
Yeah, just speaking about conversations specifically, normally we charge $250 flat for a ticket, but this year we decided to play around with a different ticketing structure. So we had a patron level ticket at the top that was $500 a person, and it included membership benefits and a delivery of a nice bottle of champagne to drink at the event. And then we still kept the $250 level ticket. And that also included membership benefits. And then we had a $125 ticket that was just access to the event. But one thing that's been really beneficial for us is recruiting a host committee ahead of the event. So these are people that we list on the website, on social media, on the event program, just anywhere we can. And they basically commit to buying a ticket to the event and then recruiting 2 other people to come with them. So it's just a really nice way to reach out to some of our supporters ahead of time and give them kind of early access to the event. And then it also ensures that they attend.
Yeah. I'm interested in KB or Dana, if you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pent up desire to get together and hug each other and celebrate. And so I don't see our in-person events going away. What I do see is that we will keep a hybrid model going forward, to be able to keep engaging people who can only participate through a virtual way. So I see that as our next challenge that we'll need to tackle, is how can we somehow manage to produce a live event and have some virtual components to it as well, to allow people to participate that way.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think Sarah was right on the mark, not putting all of our eggs in one basket, spread it out throughout the year, because we just don't know what's happening anymore. That being said, HCA is still dedicated to helping nonprofits and assisting with virtual and in-person events. So I know of our fundraising, we give instead of work on getting funds, but we are still up and operating and love everything that all of you do for the community.
Oh, well, you guys are wonderful corporate citizens, and we love what you do for us. So thank you. I'd love to hear from I'd love questions in the chat, by the way, folks. But I, as a fundraiser and as a person who sees the value of events, but also events do take, and I shouldn't be asking event planners this question. They take so much time and effort. I've always been of the mind, the $500 ticket is the way to go, and forget the $50, but because it takes just as much time and effort to. Yeah, so the idea that we would do more events, but maybe less fully produced. I mean, I don't know. That's interesting. I'd love thoughts on that. Here's a question from Marissa Swiston, who wants to hear about special touches such as gifts or swag that people might be receiving in advance or in the mail, or a special delivery. Has anybody had any experience with that? And then we've also got another question about future food and beverage at events, what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I'll address the swag, and then Chelsea, I'll touch on your F&B. So as far as special touches go, that is so important, and making sure that your guests feel like you thought about them, and that they're important, especially when we're going into hybrid. It's 2 different events, and you need to think about it from an on-site person attendee as well as a virtual attendee. And that's really where gifting and swag and that kind of stuff is going to come into play, is sending that to the virtual attendees beforehand so that they feel like they're part of it. But I know most of y'all have seen, the different cocktail classes, or like wine and chocolate pairings that you can mail out before, or if you're doing, if you have like a songwriter round or something like that at the live event, be really cool to have that artist, write out some lyrics, sign it, and mail that to the guests so that, they've enjoyed the music, but then they also kind of got something that the people on site didn't get. So make that feel exclusive for them as well. But yeah, Marissa, I have tons and tons of ideas as far as like gifting and that kind of stuff goes. It all just depends on where your guests are and what your price point is. We can do something for, $50. We could do something for a lot more than that. Does anybody else have something to add
I
to
think
gifting?
Dana raised your hand, maybe.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'll say one thing that I've really enjoyed doing this past year is working with local vendors, because we all know that especially the local events industry and music industry has really suffered or had a hard time this year. So one of my favorites that I've used several times already is Nashville Smile Bar. So they have in-person photo booths, but they also have a great virtual photo booth option that is very user-friendly. They make custom frames with your agency's logo on it. So anytime that one of your attendees posted on social media, you get organic marketing from it. So it's
That's
cost
so
effective, it's
cool.
fun, and everybody's had a great reception to that. And then also, instead of just giving them just things for things' sake, everybody has 40 of these cups. So instead of just sending plastic just to send plastic, do things that really draw the group together. So I've loved doing yoga and stretching sessions. So there's a local yogi here named Rosa Castano, and she'll do a custom yoga class, and it can be as short as 5 minutes or as long as an hour. And what it does is it takes people out of their norm. I got to check emails. I got to go, 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 go. Lets them slow down, lets them breathe, and then they're actually able and willing to listen to your message. So she's been great to work with as well.
Super. KB or Lindsay, anything to add there? We had a question about food and beverage, what that's going to look like going forward if we know. Any thoughts on that?
I would love to ask that question too, because one of the things that people love is food at our events. We love to bring in local caterers from our culinary incubator to provide food, and haven't quite figured out a way to provide that to a broad audience. And I don't know if any of the other presenters or anyone here, right, has dealt with like, how do we get food to people without it costing more than we're able to manage?
When you ask about get food to people, do you mean shipping it to people's homes? Like if you have a completely virtual event, but you want to provide a dinner?
Yeah, we've definitely had people ask about like, can we get some of the food that we're used to having at the event? And once we look at the pricing and the logistics of it, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah, it does get costly, especially because you have to keep it chilled, right? Most of the time. So typically what we've done with that is we work with a chef who's actually out of Las Vegas, but there are a couple Nashville chefs that will do this with us as well. But we've shipped all the ingredients and we did like a little cooking demonstration. So it was an activity, but then they also got dinner. But you're correct, KB. I mean, that can get pricey. The only other thing that I've really done to get people food is just sending, Grubhub gift cards or Order Up or, whatever, which everybody's been doing. But as far as the future of food and bev, to me, it is, buffets where you're being served. It is individually packaged items. And then we're also seeing, if it is a food display, it being extremely tiered, so that there's no way if somebody goes in to grab a yogurt parfait, there's no way that they could have touched another one, right? Also keeping plexiglass up in front so people are not, sharing germs that way. But I think as soon as we get into hybrid, really get into hybrid, I think we're going to start seeing some really creative ways for food and beverage to be delivered to both on-site and virtual guests. I just don't know that we're there yet.
So Joe Truitt, you have a hand raised. Do you have a question?
In my past life, which was up until a couple of months ago, I spent 20 years in food and beverage, so I can kind of talk on this a little bit. I was most recently with Del Frisco's Double Eagle Steakhouse, so had a lot of those clients that at the beginning we were catering to their homes. I was running properties across the US and never even stepped foot in them. So trying to figure that out was really interesting. We've done lots of wine tastings where we're able to ship them locally to their clients if they all are within the same city as one of our restaurants, using carrier services and getting that scheduled for later in the evening, doing a happy hour wine tasting. As far as on-site dining, I actually just had this conversation yesterday with my MPI family. So we were talking about just communicating with the restaurant planner and telling them, hey, this is the budget that I have. Let's do smaller portions of something. Let's do, we have some planners that like to put all three of the appetizers on this same plate and then serve it. It can get iffy. You have to look at allergies and make sure that all of that is detailed very clearly in any type of signage that you have, but definitely an option for everyone to be able to do it that way. But it's definitely possible. The people on the restaurant side, they get it. They know. At the beginning, we were all just trying to figure out, how are we going to do this and not charge more because we have individual plating or whatever it is. It's the cost of doing business. And that's where the food and beverage folks are at. We understood that fully, and we're all on the same team. We want people in the restaurants. We want people to be able to enjoy what they like. So also, like you mentioned, the gift cards, there are some restaurant companies that are doing branded gift cards too. So you can do custom gift cards from a restaurant that might be a popular one near an area or a hotel that some of the hybrid folks are staying at, and they can customize it with your organization's logo as a thank you or a welcome that way too.
Super. Those are great ideas, Joe. Thank you so much for sharing them. I'm involved with a women's organization that delighted me for a virtual happy hour. I got this little bag of treats made by a local caterer, had a little can of sparkling wine, and with instructions to refrigerate until the big moment when we all zoomed together. And they used volunteers to deliver. And so we're able to take that off. So I do think that a lot of us have volunteers, and that might be a way to help them feel utilized during this time safely without the expensive courier service, and using those local vendors. We had a question about wine delivery. Is that allowed here in the buckle of the Bible Belt, in Nashville and the Middle Tennessee area? Does anybody know about how that worked?
Yeah, so there's certain, Catherine, there's some strategies to deliver it. But there's certain states that you can't deliver to, at least that's what I've run into. But there's essentially, there's somehow a loophole, and if somebody else knows this, but it's something between, Alabama's a no-go foul. And I think Kentucky's another one, but there's some sort of like loophole between the distributor and the company selling it. As long as they're not like involved, then it works. I don't know. But somehow it works and it's legal. I asked a lawyer because I was nervous about shipping wine and liquor and all that all over the US, but it is possible. And legal.
We'll look into that, because none of us want to break the law, and nonprofits are notorious for getting all that kind of product donated, usually from a distributor. So we'd have to make sure we did it correctly. One question from Marla Brader is tips on, do you have any tips on keeping outdoor events spaced and safe? Because that's, perhaps we'll be seeing those sooner than some of the indoor events. Anybody, panelists? Yeah.
Thinking about, we do a family festival for the community in the summer, and we're thinking maybe by summer we'll be back to at least having outdoor events. And so we're kind of thinking about how we can space out different groups, and if we can have people have scheduled times to come, because normally it's like a 4-hour long festival with booths and activities for people. And you just come anytime that you want or stay as long as you want. So we're kind of thinking maybe we'll have to give out timed things like, sign up to come between 10 and 11, between 11 and 12, to hopefully keep smaller groups outside. And then of course, we'll have to think very carefully about food that's offered, and maybe having designated areas where you can go and take your mask off to eat, but not be walking around the entire event without masks on. So.
Great. Good. That sounds fun. I'm going to sign up.
Yeah, we've done a couple. We actually did an outdoor event mid-pandemic. We did the steeplechase in Charleston, and we were able to safely do that by just spacing people out, giving them their designated areas and saying, you have to stay within your designated area. You have to keep or you don't have to wear your mask while you're in here. But as soon as you step out of this area, you have to wear your mask. And we would previously we would have VIP tents where you would just have this ample amount of food and a giant bar. And we broke that down so that each area had its own food and beverage. That way we weren't spreading germs, and we successfully did it. We were not a super spreader event. So
Cool. Well, you guys, I can't believe it, but we have just come to the end of our time together. Dana, Lindsay, KB, and Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. You've got so many insights, and you've got our brains just all moving along. And I started off by saying we've been doing at CNM a lot of thinking about Salute, but I never finished my sentence, which is we are doing Salute this year. And call for entries, where we'll get together and share how to do the applications, is on April the 8th. And applications open, I believe, the 1st of April.
April 1st. Yep.
April 1st. All right. Thanks, Catherine. And what time is that call for entries event?
Oh, I didn't have that ready. I'll let you know in just a second. Sorry.
It's in the morning.
It's in the morning,
It's
right?
at 8 or 9.
It'll be in the chat in just a minute. But so we're so excited. We have 12 awards this year, and we will be distributing a lot of money. Our award sponsors are on board and excited. So that's another thing to look forward to. It will be a virtual event, although we're hoping to have some watch parties as we get closer to the time. But we have made that decision that it's not going to be even a little bit in person this year unless we do smaller watch parties. So you guys, Extreme Makeover on special events. How fun was this? Thank you so much for being a part of it. Have a great day. Continue sending questions. Catherine will send an email tomorrow with all the resources listed and maybe a couple other bonuses from the panelists. And we will look forward to all the great things you guys do for making your nonprofit stronger this year. Thanks, and have a great afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.